Welcome to the Essential Self-Care Podcast, a show for those of us who are, let's face it, too busy for self-care. I'm your host, Dr. Sheetal Ajmani, a physician turned speaker, coach, and consultant. As the founder of Radiant Living Institute, I help women, leaders, and executives navigate personal and professional challenges with clarity, confidence, and self-compassion. I also work with leadership teams and organizations to optimize their performance and impact. In this show, you will hear real world experiences and expert insights to help you cultivate a kinder, more compassionate relationship with yourself so that you can show up as your best self, whether in your career, community, or personal relationships. Please note that this show is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always consult your own healthcare provider about your specific situation. Now, let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Essential Self-Care Podcast. I'm so excited to be in the podcast studio today with my guest. It's always a pleasure when I can be in this studio, in this physical space together with my guest. And so I'm so excited today. We have the pleasure of welcoming Kate Pittman to the show. Kate is a nonprofit arts executive with over 20 years experience working in Hampton Roads. She currently serves as executive director of the Vibe District, which is the first arts district in Virginia Beach. Kate has been instrumental to the growth of the Vibe District since it was first adopted by City Council in 2015. With the addition of over 68 new small businesses and over 500 works of art, Kate works with community leaders, city officials, business association, and artists to champion local culture. The Vibe Creative District has been recognized by Rolling Stone Magazine, Southern Living, and the New York Times. I'm so excited to have you on the show, Kate. Welcome.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful space.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always great to have local guests, local leaders in where we can kind of be in the space together. So I'm excited to dive into this conversation with you today, starting with, and this is perhaps a little bit of a slightly different angle than I've taken in other episodes of the show, because I want to actually start with the Vibe District and how that district and creating that district and the impact you've seen there, how you've seen that maybe impact individuals and the community's self-care. So the growth of the Vibe District touches many lives daily, including the entrepreneurs who are running businesses there, the artists who have created public murals, and of course, the community of visitors, both locally, and Virginia Beach has a lot of visitors coming for vacation events. And so there's so many ways that your work impacts the region, including economic development, public art accessibility, and community building. So in what ways have you seen this work impact self-care for individuals and the community as a whole?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think a lot of it comes back to individual authenticity. There's just nothing that quite replaces those individual feelings, initiatives, that creativity that comes out of someone. And in the Vibe District, I love to see entrepreneurs creating what they themselves want for themselves as a person, for their families. Same thing with artists. When they are being true to who they are and embracing the things that bring them joy, that trickles out into the community. And having community spaces like the Vibe District, and where it's an outdoor museum of sorts, and you can be in the fresh air, you can be out walking, you can be engaging socially. Those creative placemaking tools that create these spaces are so valuable to self-care. It's a feeling, right? You can walk into a different space, whether it's a room or, a new space outside, and you can actually feel the difference sometimes. And I think that relates to those kind of intrinsic things that we don't even necessarily think about, but that impact us when we are in spaces that have that kind of authenticity, that joy, that safety to them. And that really does make people feel better.
You brought to light so many important points. And as you were sharing that, I was jotting down some notes, and I wrote that essentially you've created a space. You've been working on creating a space for the expression of individual authenticity, whether that's entrepreneurs building their businesses, artists creating public murals, or individuals and visitors coming to experience those right. Businesses, experience the public art. And something that brings to mind to me is just when I'm in spaces like that, where I am seeing the creative expression of individual authenticity. I love that phrasing and that verbiage that you presented to us today so far. And when I'm in spaces like that, I feel inspired. And I'm sure that other visitors do as well. And so just how that can not only inspire visitors, also, Kate, we met through some work I was doing over the past few years around how arts can impact our health. And there is research about public murals and the impact that has on our health and well-being. And then also, from my background as a physician, also thinking about and realizing that sort of impact that it can have on our overall health and well-being, thinking about accessibility.
Right.
These murals are public, free, accessible to anyone who is able to visit. And that in itself is also such a gift.
Absolutely. I think accessibility is really important in the Vibe District and anywhere that you're trying to put things out there for the public that they don't necessarily have to pay a ticket for, that they can come and enjoy. So that might be having the benches next to the community fence mural where they can come and there's shade and they can sit there and it's a very welcoming, safe space. Those little things can actually change an entire district and a neighborhood, and they can actually help reduce crime. They can make people get out and walk around and be more active in their community. They can build bridges where businesses are suddenly wanting to collaborate and work together because they find that sense of joy together and that common ground of creativity and how can they improve the area around them. So it becomes not just about their individual business, but maybe about their whole streetscape or maybe about how the whole neighborhood connects at large. And you see that kind of community building where people actually want to work together and find ways to improve not only their own space, but for everyone who comes to visit. And I enjoy touring tourists all the time. We bring people from all over the country into Virginia Beach, and I call it a locals playground. If it's something that we enjoy, that our business owners and our school kids want to come and have fun doing, it's absolutely going to attract people from other cities and states.
Absolutely. So multifaceted because you brought forth even more benefits than what we originally talked about, walking around. So there's that physical element, getting that movement and being active, the not only the individual experience of perhaps finding inspiration, finding joy in visiting, in interacting with some of the business owners, the small business owners who are bringing their passions to light, of interacting with the art and engaging with the art, but also fostering and building more connections and collaborations,
the shared connection,
and community.
Right? Absolutely.
Exactly. Your work, as you mentioned, involves a lot of outdoor public art. And you've also shared with me previously that you see value in spending time with artists and making art yourself to balance and round out your own physical and mental health. So shifting a little bit from the impact that the Vibe District has on individuals who visit, on the individuals who are actively contributing to that community, as well as visitors and the community itself, shifting a bit to the impact that this work is having on you individually. So part of that is the outdoor public art and engaging with the artists and making art yourself. So tell me a little bit about that and how that has impacted your self-care and overall well-being.
Absolutely. I mean, I think as a professional and a working mom, there's very little downtime, as many of us feel. And so the joy that it brings me to see all of these creatives living out their dreams and being able to help support and witness all of that happening around has really helped me tremendously myself. I like to do self-care routines like reading and drawing or sketching, kind of downtime a little bit for myself, but there's really nothing that quite fills my cup in terms of community and shared experiences with others. So there are many different things that we have done in the Vibe District, from creative mornings talks to outdoor yoga or sound art with the crystal bowls and the sound that can trickle into your nervous system and kind of make you feel better. All of those layered experiences really have helped me on my own self-care journey. And I think that I'm very fortunate to have a really interesting, fun job, and that allows me a little bit of escape. When there are times that are tough and personal, I can dive into that creative realm, and that really helps balance out my kind of work-life balance. And creativity can do that for so many people. I encourage everyone, people tell me all the time, I'm not an artist. And it's like, that's really not the point. Actually, when you're moving paint around a canvas, when your pencil is dragging across that paper, you are doing so much for your mental health and for your self-being. It doesn't matter what it looks like at the end. You're not working on a Mona Lisa or some kind of a masterpiece. Just create. Those moments really settle into you and help you in lots of different ways. And as you mentioned, there's probably more research now post-COVID about how the arts are supporting mental health, physical health. There is a lot of data out there. And even just showing up and going to a concert or walking down a path that has art or going out into nature and listening to the birds, all of those things will help settle your being and give you that downtime away from all the digital and all the noise. And I find that all to be really important.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, as we both mentioned, there is a lot of data and research about this, about arts, both creative art therapies. So there's things like music therapy, art therapy, and also arts engagement. So like you mentioned, just going to a concert or picking up a pencil or a pen and sketching, or going to see some art murals or going to visit a museum. So it's interesting. And certainly as a physician, as a scientist, I'm always interested in seeing that research, and also on a personal level. And for anyone listening, I mean, just thinking about, and you mentioned this earlier, Kate, about how you feel when you're engaging those spaces. Something that I share often with my clients is to really become a student of your own life, of your own experience. And so just testing it out and seeing how it feels for you is so valuable, perhaps one of the most valuable pieces of it. And you mentioned a lot of different programming also that you've created to continue to lean into that community building, placemaking, creative placemaking, things like creative mornings of sound art experiences, which is really neat. I follow you on LinkedIn, and I've seen a mobile art experience, like a mobile art gallery that you created for an event. And so tell us a little bit about sort of these different facets and these different avenues of that. And also, if you could spend a little bit of time telling us specifically about creative mornings. I've had the opportunity to attend a few times. I actually had the opportunity to speak at one of those events as well. And it really is a very special event that exists within our region, but also globally. So in your response, if you could share a little bit about creative mornings as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we're looking at programming for the public and thinking about our creative capital here in Hampton Roads, right? All of the interesting entrepreneurs that we have, all of the amazing artists, we're always thinking about like, how do we connect them to each other, to our guests, to our locals, but then also to a bigger platform. And so Creative Mornings has absolutely done that for us. We are in year 3, and we have had the pleasure of welcoming in some really amazing speakers. And, this is one of those low threshold events. You just come. We're not asking you of anything. You can just show up, RSVP so that we have enough coffee for you, save your seat. You come in and you're filled with a room of sometimes as many as 80 to 90 other interesting people who want to connect to their creative community. And it's a platform that then we can share our local creatives with a much broader audience globally. So each of the events that we do is videoed and photographed and then uploaded onto the Global Creative Mornings platform. And then that helps give exposure to our people on an international platform. And so we're really excited about those opportunities. In Virginia Beach, we do see visitors from all around the world. And so sometimes we are taking art out on the road, as you mentioned, in either mobile art displays or live painting at events, because we're trying to meet people where they are, right? Not everyone wants to kind of jump in and paint a mural on their first day. Sometimes people just want to have a quiet experience in an outdoor park. Sometimes people want to take a class or a lesson. There are different types of opportunities. We have free walking tours every month. We do a bike tour, right? So different kinds of things. We have golf carts now because we want to be accessible to the public. So I can't even tell you how many seniors that we've had or persons with disabilities that say, oh my gosh, thank you so much for the simple gesture of having a golf cart so that I can feel like I can get out and it can be accessible to me and my family. And then there's a lot of storytelling, which really connects with the tours, with creative mornings and being able to share these really interesting, authentic stories about the people that live and work here and what we're trying to create together. And that is a theme that resonates all over, much broader than Virginia Beach.
Thank you so much for sharing that and for the intentional efforts and actions taken by the Vibe District to really offer that accessibility in terms of what's available within the district, in terms of things like you mentioned with the golf carts. And I will say also in terms of the creative mornings that you described, as I mentioned, I've had the opportunity to attend. I have it just on my calendar as a recurring. So third Friday of each month, it's just on my calendar. Yeah. So just when I see it pop up on my recurring calendar, I show up. But I've had the opportunity to meet others in that space who also, similar to me, seem to have it as a recurring on their calendar because I've gotten to know some of the same folks who I see there every time. And so, just kind of looping it back to that community event programming and how that ties back also to individual self-care is that there are people like me and some of the other friends who I've made through attending who are just there every month, who if I don't see them at any other time, I see them that month, that day of the month at the event, and we have an opportunity to catch up. And so it's clear that it is part of that individual self-care as well.
Absolutely. We're humans, right? And things like physical touch where Creative Mornings promotes hugs and high fives, just being together, having those moments to have conversations. That's absolutely part of self-care for me, at least. That is my favorite day of the month now. Being in a room with people who are excited to learn and connect over creativity. And so kind of putting yourself in those spaces where it resonates with you and you find others who have that shared experience definitely forms self-care in my mind. Yeah.
And I want to, it sounds like in what you're describing as well is that your work, the work that you're doing with the Vibe Creative District is also an important part of your self-care, which is really interesting. I recently had Rebecca Kleinhampel on the show. I think you may know her. She's the executive director of the Virginia Living Museum. She also talked about something similar, like just I love the work that I do. It's just kind of all folded into my life and part of that balance and that integration of my sort of professional and personal. And it sounds very similar to your experience with the work that you're doing, that in many ways it's part of your self-care. And when there's challenges going on personally, you have that like creative outlet through your work. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think it's interesting. It's interesting, one, to find something that you can do for work that feels so much part of your self-care simply through the passion, the creative outlet, the meaning that it gives you. And then also it can be an interesting balance. Something that Rebecca spoke to was, even though it's something she's so passionate about and she can just really throw herself into, it's like she needs to remind herself also to take those breaks. So I'm curious kind of your take on that.
Yeah, I think I had a really unique scenario that, from a very young age, I very much fell in love with art museums and the creative experience and, beautiful public spaces that held art. And so I'm one of those rare people that could identify from a very young age, this is what I'm going to dedicate my education to. And this is what I'm going to pursue as a work passion. And all of that luckily fell into place for me. However, everyone has challenges in life. And so, I ended up in a very different position than I envisioned initially, partly because I had twin boys and they came very, very early. And so I kind of had a medical crisis experience, something that, wasn't planned, was definitely not part of a future goal list, and, had a dream job, but it was a very big and complicated job. And then when I had a medical crisis and delivered twin boys at 2 pounds each, suddenly we were faced with months in a hospital trying to figure out and regroup, how do I find my own way forward in that? It's obviously with my number one priority was their physical health and well-being. But as an individual person, to have my work be so fulfilling and so joyful for the things that were important to me as a person, it absolutely helped me through that experience. And so, even after we left the hospital and I was starting the Vibe District role, I kind of joked, I had triplets, right? Because I had two little babies and I was starting the Arts District and trying to figure it out along the way. Um, and that was a complicated time in my life where, I might be working in the middle of the night because I'm taking care of infants all day. But those opportunities for me to just focus on something that I loved so much that meant a lot to me personally helped me balance out the stress, the anxiety, the emotional worry of being a new mom and dealing with hospital visits. And, I think their first year of life, we had over 200 doctor's appointments, things like that, that people don't necessarily see on LinkedIn, right? You don't see that on social media, but we all are balancing struggles, whether it's our own personal health or a loved one or some kind of a family complication. And so for me, the work became very much kind of a safe outlet, right? It was a place where I was very confident. I knew what I was doing. It wasn't a scary hospital scenario where maybe, you don't know all the medical jargon or you're not sure what is the next best step. And so for me to be able to kind of focus on what I was doing and to have the community support and so much positive feedback from the community, that it really helped me personally. I always like to say I have a great job. People are always thanking me for what I do in the community, and people are always so excited to be connecting to what's happening that brings me so much personal joy and fulfillment, and it helps take away some of the other, concern or worry in other parts of my life. Yeah.
Thank you so much for describing that.
Yeah.
And just for our listeners, your boys are doing well.
Boys are doing great. They are 10. So the twins are 10. They are doing great. Vibe is 10. Vibe has been doing great. And so it kind of goes to show you, you can, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a very easy, smooth road, right? The things that you can accomplish. But I'm very grateful that I've had the opportunities that I've had and been able to show my kids that, right? They're 10 now and they're, in their elementary school years, thinking about what they want to do as they grow older. And I'm very proud to be able to show them, these are the things that were important to me and that I love. And now I get to share them with the community.
I really appreciate you sharing that. I mean, that's in so many ways such a large part of what this show is about, is those things that, we may not post or share on social media per se, but that are very much a real part of all of our lives, those hardships, those challenges, while the specifics may look different for each one of us. You said it so beautifully that we're all going through it. We're all facing some sort of challenges, and just kind of where can we find those spaces to fill our cup, to feel confident, to find that joy, to perhaps even lean into that creative expression of individual authenticity. And, I think a beautiful way to wrap up this episode is that you shared with me a motto that you have. And I think the personal journey that you just shared with us also ties in very well with that motto that you have. So as we're wrapping up, can you share that with our listeners and what that means to you?
Yeah, I like to tell people for the last 10 years, I've had so many people say, how do I get involved or what can I do? And I like to just say to people, show up, and I think that that's my personal motto for myself. If I'm seeing other people doing things that are really exciting to me and appealing, then I want to put myself next to those people or in those same rooms so that I can show up and be near the things that are important to me. And so the idea of showing up is that, you need to get yourself ready and get out there, right? You can't just sit at home and watch online or, scroll Instagram and LinkedIn and say like, oh, this person's doing this or that. You actually have to put yourself in those scenarios. So whether it's attending different events or signing up to be a board member on a different board or becoming a member of an organization, those are ways that you're showing up and then actually putting yourselves in those rooms to open up those doors of opportunity. There are very few things that I have done in my career that were not intentional. There are very few things that I look back on and say like, oh gosh, well, that was just pure luck. No, if that's your goal and that's where you want to see yourself, then you need to prepare yourself with the tools and the accessibility to show up in those spaces so that you can see that reward reflected back at you.
Yeah. I love that motto. It's so easy to remember, right? It's just 2 words. It's so easy to remember. And I appreciate you sharing what that means to you. When I think about that also, I think about everything that you just shared and showing up, in those professional spaces and also in those personal spaces, like what you alluded to earlier of just like showing up to that drawing class or showing up by just like picking up the pencil and sketching at home, not to make it perfect, but just because you want to experiment with it. And perhaps that will give you some joy, or perhaps that is your creative expression of individual authenticity. And so just showing up for in all of those spaces, personally and professionally, whatever that means for you, whatever you've had on your mind, whatever sort of, as you mentioned, whatever goals you may have out there, again, whether that's professional or personal, just showing up. So I think that's such a beautiful way to wrap up today's episode. Where can our listeners learn more about you, Kate, and the work that you're doing with the Vibe District?
Sure, absolutely. We have a wonderful website, vibecreativedistrict.org. I'm also on LinkedIn and Instagram, of course. But I invite you to come out to the Vibe District and show up at one of our events like Creative Mornings on the third Friday of every month, or for one of our walking tours where you can get personal stories and introductions to different business owners and just come enjoy the space with us.
Absolutely. And I will include the website in the show notes below. Thanks again for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's a wrap. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and write a quick positive review wherever you're tuning in, on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Your reviews really do help the show reach more people who need it. And as a free gift, don't forget to download your Radiant Living Starter Guide at radiantlivinginstitute.com.